The story opens with the heir of the heavenly demonic cult struggling in vain to find a remedy for his debilitating condition. His subordinate confessed that he had failed to procure the medicine and immediately bowed deeply, pleading for forgiveness from the cult's heir. Winvi smiled gently and explained that the energy imbalance wasn't something that could be easily corrected, as a crucial part of it had been irreparably damaged. He silently reminded himself of this truth, considering himself an average disciple due to the core of his energy being destroyed from birth. Moreover, his body was incapable of sustaining the internal flow of qi, so he dedicated all his efforts to mastering mystical arts instead. After ascending to the position of heir to the heavenly demon cult, he finally obtained the medicine, only to realize it was utterly ineffective. Winvi pondered where he might find something truly helpful, when suddenly, someone approached and announced to the heir that the awaited moment had finally arrived. The man who appeared before him inquired whether he was in command during the deputy chapter's absence. Winvi responded to Hajin that although much time had passed, he remained in perfect condition, contrary to what he had feared. The young man remarked that Winvi's journey across their land had taken considerable time, but this time he had accomplished something remarkable. Hajin replied with a confident smirk that since the leader and heir had failed to fulfill their responsibilities, it was now his duty to ensure the cult's continued prosperity. As he passed by, Winvi frowned, then offered a thank you that sounded forced and cold, lacking any genuine warmth. Seated in his chambers, he found it hard to believe that the cunning Hajin had embarked on a journey merely to observe how others live. You need not worry until he actually makes a foolish move, but remain vigilant and ready for trouble at any moment. Winvi was shocked to realize he might be bold enough to attempt murder right in his own room, a move both arrogant and reckless, as he gripped his glass tightly. The sinister grin spreading across his face explained why the drink carried such a deadly bitterness. At that moment, he turned to the assassins trailing him and asked if they wanted a drink too, expressing regret at having to drink alone. Suddenly, he demanded they attack him, pointing out that they had even tried to poison him as part of their scheme. As the killers lunged forward, Winvi shouted defiantly, questioning how they dared to assault him within the sanctuary of his own room. They launched their attack simultaneously, but their strikes passed harmlessly through him, prompting one assassin to ask when he had mastered the art of illusion. Meanwhile, Winvi had already distanced himself, taunting them that such feeble attempts would never succeed. He added that if they truly intended to kill him in his own refuge, they should have come better prepared. Yet his words failed to deter the uninvited intruders, who remained resolute in their mission to eliminate the arrogant man. Winvi warned them that their strength was insufficient before unleashing several chains tipped with sharp points. The weapon appeared so abruptly that no one had a chance to react, resulting in everyone being pierced by the chains. With a smirk, Winvi challenged the people behind him, questioning if this was truly all they could muster after all their training. Receiving no response, he extended his hand and asked whether they believed their esteemed nephews would be disappointed by such a display. Hajin and the elders were stunned, fully aware that the red crane's beak could incinerate an entire bull with a single pinch. Yet despite suffering severe poisoning, Winvi still laughed and boldly threatened them with his own wisdom. The young man admitted that if his body were in better condition, he would have surely left a hole in his opponent's head. Hajin responded, sharing his own frustration at not having fulfilled his dreams until now. He refused to stand idly by and allowed this person to learn martial arts and rise to become their leader. All the elders rallied behind him, drawing their weapons and encircling the young man to prevent any chance of escape. Winvi smiled and taunted them, asking if they truly intended to overwhelm a mere pup like him with their entire crowd after provoking him. Hajin pointed at him and retorted that none of this would have occurred if he had simply fulfilled his role as the cult's heir. Suddenly, Winvi cut him off with a sharp glance, demanding he stop spouting nonsense, then asked who was really behind this. The man challenged him, questioning what he meant since the elders and the deputy cult leader had jointly made the decision. Winvi spread his hands in dismissal, prompting the man to smirk and admit he knew Winvi lacked the courage to take such a step. Winvi realized this was a directive from outside their divine cult. The elders had betrayed him, even the master had consented to the cult's plan to eliminate him. Furious at the accusation, Hajin unleashed his energy and shouted, demanding how the man dared to blame him for such treachery. Wasting no time, the man lunged forward, intent on striking Winvi down before he could react. Without dodging, the man observed that Winvi's reaction confirmed his suspicions, and silently told the master that this was the consequence of placing trust in him. That damned fool finally struck them from behind, but Winvi made no move to evade the blow. Pinning the man against the wall, Winvi remarked that no matter how much they despised each other, they had trained under the same master. As the current leader of the divine cult of the heavenly demon, he declared he would personally end the man's life with his own hands. Winvi questioned the point of continuing this charade when everything had already been orchestrated, and how the man had become a mere puppet to outside forces due to his limited insight. Enraged, Hajin demanded how the man dared speak so boldly, then resolved that he would not face death quietly. After enduring another strike, the man finally composed himself, assuring everyone not to worry as he would rectify his errors and guarantee the cult's flourishing future. Initially, Winvi showed no reaction, but then he suddenly erupted into a loud, maniacal laugh that startled everyone present. Tension gripped the room as he declared that despite their long endurance of him, they still failed to recognize the full extent of his true power. He warned that since they had resolved to kill him, they should have kept in mind a crucial factor that could have given them a significant edge. Clearing his throat with a tight grip, Hajin expressed his displeasure, nodding that even before his death his tongue was restless, foreshadowing the inevitable. At that very moment, his eyes suddenly widened in shock. He noticed, to his astonishment, that the young man held the demon dragon's sword, which had appeared out of nowhere. Grasping for his own sword, Hajin demanded how he dared to stir trouble in his final moments. He tried to prevent him from unleashing his tricks, but it was too late. The man was already engulfed in a radiant purple glow. The man was thrown backward, then asked incredulously how Winvi had managed to amass such immense mystical energy. With a confident smile, the young man explained that he had channeled all his mystical power into the sword, which embodied the will of the first heavenly demon. He had been gathering mystical energy while fending off their futile attacks, and now he was prepared to unleash all that power back upon them. Suddenly, one of the men commanded the elders to form a protective barrier using their internal energy. But Winvi declared it was already too late, then swung his sword ablaze with a hellish flame that consumed souls. An intense surge of energy erupted from the weapon, ensnaring everyone nearby and forcing them to scream in agony. The blast was so devastating that its roar echoed far beyond the building, audible for several kilometers. Kneeling amid the swirling wind, Winvi reflected that despite his harsh life, he never imagined meeting such a grim fate. He felt cold snowflakes on his skin, recalling how everything mirrored the day when boys had mercilessly kicked him as a child. When 3 boys attacked him, they warned they'd spare him this time, calling him a bastard who claimed to see ghosts. One of the boys threatened that if he uttered any more nonsense about possessing an evil spirit, mere words wouldn't be enough. Another sneered that he'd heard Winvi's mind was broken, yet he still insisted he could see ghosts. They said they'd have ended their own lives long ago if they were in his shoes, but Winvi's gaze fell on a nearby stone. He had only spoken the truth, yet was met with nothing but hatred. Fueled by these thoughts, he seized the stone, ready to fight back. To survive in such a cruel world, he refused to remain passive and resolved to strike back at his tormentors. When it was over, Winvi panted heavily, realizing these people lacked the wisdom to quit, only inviting more trouble upon themselves. He lifted his head and noticed the lost souls before him. I asked if they had finally fallen away. Suddenly, someone quietly approached from behind and remarked that he possessed extraordinary eyes, which startled the boy. Winvi struggled to comprehend when the man had gotten so close, as he hadn't sensed his presence until he caught sight of the luxurious clothing. He also noticed the man carried an exquisitely crafted sword, and it dawned on him that he had ventured far from human settlements and that this stranger had come specifically for him. Feeling uneasy, Winvi admitted that the stranger was intrigued by his cursed eyes and then resigned himself to whatever the man intended to do. A man with snow-white hair asked if he could simply take the eyes, to which the boy replied he couldn't refuse, uncertain if these eyes might prove valuable to him. Suddenly, the man draped a cloak over him, explaining that these eyes were not a curse but a blessing, and that some individuals are born with a gifted upper energy core or a unique soul. He added that such people have always accomplished great deeds. His words were so soothing they almost seemed unbelievable, hinting at their true potential. More importantly, Winvi felt warmth for the first time in his life, and then he heard the question, would he follow his savior? Upon hearing Winvi's consent, the stranger asked his name but, nodding his silence, decided to name him Winvi to mark the moment of their meeting. From that moment, the boy found a renewed purpose to live and devoted himself entirely to supporting his master. His master was trapped in a state of distorted energy, all because of this cursed body, which kept him from truly living. Accepting death here would be a tragic loss. His body was on the verge of crumbling to dust, and if he failed to act, survival was impossible. Faced with no other options, he resolved to release the last remnants of his energy from within. This was a forbidden ritual in Zoroastrianism, the sacred rebirth through the pristine divine wheel. These forbidden techniques allowed practitioners to cheat death by transferring their soul into another body. Winvi channeled the remaining mystical energy into the shattered fragments of the demon dragon sword, initiating the forbidden ritual. Now he entrusted his fate to the heavens and urged his master to hold on until his return. At that instant, a brilliant beam of light descended from the sky, engulfing his body in flames and transferring his soul into a new vessel. Before regaining consciousness, Winvi heard distant voices as his entire body tingled and remained numb following the soul transfer. His eyes snapped open, wide with disbelief, as he questioned whether the rebirth through the pristine divine wheel had truly succeeded. Suddenly, a woman wielding a stick turned toward him, demanding if he could hear her and how long he intended to lie there. Rising to his feet, the young man was startled to discover this body shared his name, while the woman declared she had endured enough. Without hesitation, she brandished her stick and shouted, questioning how he dared to ignore her when all eyes were on him. With a swift, practiced motion, Winvi seized her wrist, preventing a wooden shard from striking him, leaving the woman utterly stunned. A gaunt man fixed her with a fierce glare and bluntly declared that her breath was unbearably foul, advising her to turn away. Snatching her hand back, she snapped angrily, challenging whether he dared to defy her just commands and insult her in the process. As she headed for the exit, she shouted fiercely, warning him not to even think about leaving until he acknowledged his errors. Crouched on the bed, Winvi deduced from the faint traces left in this body that the woman was the child's stepmother. The divine wheel of rebirth activates only in bodies that have just died or are teetering on the brink of death. He found it hard to believe that this man had been beaten nearly to death, yet Winvi's current form could rival his former life. Though this body was poorly conditioned and barely trained, it possessed something new, a lower energy core that hadn't existed before. Perhaps he could cultivate this lower core and master all the essential martial arts rooted in mystical disciplines. Additionally, he needed to strengthen his ocular power to command the dead and restore them to their original state. Winvi resolved there was no alternative. He had to undertake this path if he wished to protect his master. Then he would expose those who betrayed him and reveal exactly which members of the celestial demonic cult they had allied with. He had now become a member of the Sichuan Tan clan, one of the 6 great Murim clans and the dominant power governing Sichuan's Murim region. To the west lay Tibet, home to the renowned Palace in Xinhai, the stronghold of the Kunlun sect. In the south, the Jian Zhan sect, the Heavenly Dragon Temple, and the 5 Poisons sect held sway, while the northern frontier marked the frontline of the Central Plains Murim. Facing off against the demonic heavenly cult, the Tan clan's vanguard led a formidable squad known as the Storm Detachment, composed of elite warriors. The Storm Detachment was commanded by Tan Hassan, famously known as the Boar, who was among the Tan clan's most powerful fighters. Together with the Storm Detachment, Tan Hassan established the 9 Dragons Division, a branch of the Tan clan that remains influential to this day. Sichuan Murim, the economic and strategic heartland, was centered in the 9 Dragons County, where Tan Hassan enlisted the clan's leader into his forces. Winvi discovered that Tan Hassan had 3 heirs. 2 were born to his lawful wife, Namgun Sanjun. These included his eldest son, Tan Kyujin, and his youngest, Tan Yu Chan, both of whom pursued martial arts training. However, his second son was the product of a drunken indiscretion with a maid, rendering him an illegitimate child. Despite being illegitimate, this son remained a direct descendant of the patriarch and thus a potential heir, though he endured harsh treatment within the clan. The servants glanced down at him disdainfully, explaining that the stepmother had ordered them to withhold food from their pavilion, dooming them all to starvation. The man pleaded to be allowed to pray for forgiveness, hoping the lady would show mercy, but was immediately met with a harsh slap. After being thrown several meters away, the servant slowly stood up, sneering that he was merely offering him a friendly warning. He then warned that if the behavior persisted, he would no longer be able to help, just as Winvi approached and waved his hand. The servant shouted a stern warning. If he dared to touch him even once, there would be serious consequences, as he would report everything to the lady. After some time, the battered man expressed that he would never forget the kindness shown and would remain devoted to him and the second lady. With a wild grin, Winvi asked if this meant he would provide what was needed. The servant promptly assured him that everything would be prepared immediately. Muttering under his breath, the servant declared he would return soon before hurrying off to carry out his master's orders. Winvi was stunned to realize how much his hand trembled from the beatings. Not only was his body weak, but he also lacked any allies. Partly due to the mistress's ridicule, he knew he would never advance in the clan at this rate if things continued as they were. All he could do was focus on building his internal energy and demonstrating his abilities, though the clan's energy presented a significant obstacle. He was unable to practice conventional cultivation techniques, yet many members of the Tang clan were active within the heavenly cult. This would severely impair the upper meridian, as the body was completely unprepared, potentially leading to dire consequences. Recalling the energy chamber within the inherently powerful upper meridian, he transferred it into the illusory space. An ideal location for this was the 1,000-year-old secret archive belonging to the cult of a celestial demon, allowing full manifestation. Fortunately, by employing divine reincarnation, Winvi retained the majority of his memories. Given his circumstances, the most appropriate cultivation technique was the poisonous dragon method, which he resolved to begin. After their exile from the Tang clan, they integrated into the cult, where this cultivation method enabled them to master the art of poison. Rather than harnessing demonic energy, they focused on cultivating poison energy and refining related techniques. While the Tang clan battled the demonic cult, factions emerged that specialized in the unique application of poison. If Winvi adopted the poisonous dragon technique to wield demonic arts, no one would suspect his true intentions. The challenge lay in enduring excruciating pain to acquire poison energy and absorb potent, high-level toxins. He smiled, remarking that now, having activated the upper meridian, his lifeless eyes had finally come alive. Gazing ahead, the young man asked several figures how much longer they intended to remain like that. He realized he had been strikingly handsome in a past life, yet he felt uneasy under their intense scrutiny. Winvi faced Deputy Hajin and the elders, whose eyes burned with malice and hatred as they stared at him. The man shouted defiantly, questioning how Winvi dared address the vice head of the great heavenly demon cult in such a disrespectful tone. Others, visibly displeased, demanded the release of the heir to the worship, insisting he could no longer withstand their wrath. Winvi responded with a calm smile, remarking that their furious reaction only served to delight him. They questioned how he could remain so malevolent even after death, yet had not risen up against them. Gripping the chain firmly, Winvi warned that since they had conspired to kill him, they must now face the inevitable consequences. The chain tightened around Hajin's neck, forcing him to collapse before Winvi, who asked if he truly understood the extent of his power. Lifting his gaze, the man beheld the demon known as the Ghostly King, the formidable force that Winvi embodied. At that moment, the man warned Kajin that if he remained in this weakened state, even reincarnation would be impossible. The elder then inquired if Winvi required any information, boasting vast knowledge, but was abruptly met with a firm refusal. Stretching out his hand threateningly, the man declared he already had enough allies armed with that knowledge. Winvi unleashed a surge of energy that began to morph the old man into a formless sphere, stripping away all traces of his humanity. He explained that this eerie sphere is charged with the lingering hatred of the deceased, possessing a potency far exceeding that of even the deadliest toxins. As a friend, a man tossed her into his mouth, declaring it would be his next meal, while only the desperate screams of Hajin echoed in response. The elder stood stunned, unable to comprehend the horrifying sight. They had just witnessed a man being consumed. At that instant, Winvi convulsed violently, overwhelmed by an excruciating pain that seemed to tear him apart from within. After several moments, the elders were astonished to see him rise, having endured a torment that defied human limits. Winvi declared that the cult's vice leader had become nourishment for his venomous dragon, and now it was time for them to face a decisive choice. He urged them to comply and reveal everything, but was met only with stunned silence and bewildered stares. Eventually, the man discovered that the elders were merely following directives issued by a shadowy group known as the Association. The elders' spirits quickly insisted they had told the truth, providing all the information to avoid being devoured. Winvi contemplated the nameless organization, recognizing that the greatest danger stemmed solely from its members. One elder confessed they had witnessed truly bizarre phenomena and implored others to trust their account. The heavenly demon cult is an unconventional sect that venerates its leader as the sole divine entity. The elders of this cult, devoted to the celestial demon, secretly conspired and resolved to launch an assault against him, the rightful heir to their order. Surprisingly, the dread inspired by this organization surpassed even the fear of the celestial demon, an unexpected and puzzling phenomenon. Winvi firmly believed that both the orthodox and unorthodox factions were manipulated solely by external influences beyond their control. The focus was on the apostates, individuals who had transcended ordinary humanity and sought to conquer the towering spire that ascended into the heavens. These demigods wielded immense power, capable of awe-inspiring feats. They were forces of nature, akin to unstoppable natural disasters. This implied that their leader possessed far greater strength than previously revealed, signaling a formidable challenge to any opposition. Winvi would need to capitalize on the limited time available, enduring the gradual poisoning and the slow onset of addiction it caused. 2 months later, a plate shattered in the lady's chamber as she questioned whether Sirras had truly been denied food. The servant insisted they would never defy her wishes, yet she wondered why he acted as if nothing had occurred. He should have been begging for mercy at her feet within 3 days, tormented by unbearable hunger. Whispers already circulated throughout the estate, claiming she had killed him, leaving her uncertain how to face the chapter without shame. With a weary sigh, the woman decided to inquire before they proceeded. She asked why this man had requested to be brought here. The servant explained that he sought intelligence on the current situation in Zhongho, specifically regarding the unorthodox and demonic factions. The lady frowned, displeased by the realization that he had never shown interest before, and over the past 2 months he had changed far too much. Suddenly, she proposed that someone was lurking behind him. Though seemingly insignificant, he was still the son of the clan patriarch. If the boy impresses the patriarch during his visit, he could secure a position within the clan. It's no surprise that numerous persistent opportunists circle around him, but this situation demands intervention. The woman shouted a warning that Kuzin and Yuchen must remain vigilant. They cannot afford to let that wretched Sirras slip away. At that moment, another servant announced that Mr. Yuchen had arrived, indicating he had completed his training. The woman dismissed the servant, instructing him that if he notices anything unusual in Winvi, he must report it to her immediately. Moments later, a young man entered the room with a respectful greeting, asking his mother how she was feeling. After receiving her response, Yu Chan was asked if he had achieved his goal. He replied that he had nearly mastered the hidden weapon technique. Abruptly, he shifted the topic, mentioning that he had heard about Sara and was astonished that she had shown no remorse despite her actions. The lady responded that discussing him gave her a headache because she had no clue what his true intentions were. Unexpectedly, Yuchen mentioned that someone was assisting him, prompting the woman to look up in surprise and ask if he was also considering that possibility. The man admitted he lacked sufficient internal energy, having neither eaten nor drunk anything, and doubted he could survive more than 2 months. He suggested that someone might be secretly delivering elixirs to him each night, a thought the woman entertained, though she had no idea which fool would be aiding him. Yuchen explained that this was precisely why he should join the patriarch's visit, a statement that left the woman utterly stunned. The man elaborated that if he was orchestrating a large-scale plan, his patron would inevitably take some action as well. The woman reasoned that the individual standing behind him who claimed to offer praise would surely reveal themselves, allowing them to capture that person. She questioned whether the patriarch would intervene if Sira's caused trouble, nodding they couldn't even keep him under control. Yuchen replied it didn't matter. If Wenvi caused issues, he would simply restrain him like a caring brother. If someone truly was assisting him, their power wouldn't be sufficient to overcome the entire clan standing against them. Even if he attempted something, his strength was limited to that of a person trained in the clan's energy arts. However, since these arts are accessible even to servants, their power couldn't possibly exceed the clan's higher levels. Sometime later, the servant informed Winvi that the demonic cult had been engulfed in a brutal civil war lasting 6 years. 2 months prior, he had instructed Hansamu to investigate the latest developments in Jianggu to determine how much time had slipped away. He had assumed that rebirth through the divine wheel meant only a brief lapse, but the reality was far grimmer than expected. Those 6 years were marked by utter despair, and to make matters worse, the servant revealed that the heavenly demon had vanished. The situation was dire and chaotic within the demonic cult, as no one knew when, or if, the heavenly demon would ever return. Winvi clung to the hope that his master might still be alive. After all, he couldn't simply disappear without a trace. Though eager to journey to Tiantian immediately, Winvi lacked the strength, information, and resources necessary to undertake such a mission. Especially deprived of vital intelligence, Winvi resolved to focus on restoring his body and refining his martial arts skills in the meantime. It appeared that the traders were exhausting every possible avenue to locate the masters, but since no leads emerged from accessible sources, they had to extend their search further. Winvi devised a strategy whereby the patriarch of the Tan clan would visit the Nine Dragons clan, led by the formidable Dark Lord Tan Munhyuk. Rumors suggested that the Dark Lord planned to establish an elite security force, and this gathering presented a perfect opportunity to leverage that development. If Winvi could join this special unit, he would gain access to an extensive spy network, significantly boosting his chances of locating his master. The spirit of the elder, who bore the image of a spider, revealed to the young man that he was on the brink of mastering the 12 powerful strikes of the fierce tiger. This knowledge represents the foundational techniques passed down to wandering warriors, a martial art that employs fists, palms, fingers, and legs as lethal weapons. However, to wield these effectively, one must push the body to its limits through rigorous and extreme training. Achieving this level of mastery involves practicing the method of cultivating the poisonous dragon, which includes ingesting spiritual elixirs to purify the blood and cleanse the body's energy channels. After some time, the spider spirit returned with more pills but lamented that it could offer little assistance due to the stringent safety measures in place. Winvi suggested that if the pills proved ineffective, they might be transformed into a spiritual elixir, but the elder firmly disagreed with this idea. As he began consuming the tasteless pills, the young man decided to inquire about other news, particularly about the whereabouts of the Dark Lord. The spirit responded that it was uncertain when the Dark Lord would arrive, but mentioned that Tan Yuchen had recently returned. Given the impending visit of the Dark Lord, Tan Yuchen's appearance seemed timely, though there was more to the story. The spider spirit furrowed its brows and revealed that it had witnessed a secret meeting between Tan Yuchen and his mother, where they discussed Windy and plotted a conspiracy. The young man was taken aback by the revelation that Nam Gun San Jun and Tan Yuhan had held a clandestine meeting, leaving him curious about the nature of their conversation. After hearing the account, he concluded that they intended to eliminate him during the Dark Lord's forthcoming visit. They also suspect that he has a mysterious benefactor supporting him from the shadows, a theory they formed after studying the dramas of his youth. He was perplexed about how to join a security unit, while others were eager to handle all the dirty work on his behalf. Although he disliked the situation, they continued trying to humiliate him until he suddenly knocked on the Hun's door. After inviting him inside, Winvi noticed a tray in the servant's hands, who quickly explained that the lady had requested it be brought to him. She mentioned that he had completed his thoughts and, as a reward for his endurance, she offered this to replenish his energy. The young man found the old woman's predictability tiresome but chose to play along, asking her to leave the tray there. The concerned Hyans admitted guiltily that she wanted to observe how he would drink it, insisting it had to be done immediately. Winvi was certain she had mistakenly mixed in a poison that induces madness, but since he had already mastered the cultivation technique, it wouldn't affect him. As he sipped the soup, he detected the essence of a century-old ginseng blended with rare flowers and a subtle trace of insanity-inducing poison. This elixir was extraordinary. A single dose could not only restore vitality but amplify it several times over. However, in such a large quantity, the elixir's toxins would overwhelm the brain, a lethal dose for any ordinary person. With a sly smile, Winvi concluded that, as he had suspected, the elixir was laced with poison, brazenly slipped in to catch him off guard. The perfumers were instantly outraged, concluding that this woman from the Namgoon clan had lost her mind by daring to deceive such a master. Winvi turned toward them with a threatening glare, commanding silence while simultaneously ordering them to follow the lady and locate the sorcerer aiding her. The man executed her plan flawlessly. First, he would drive the target insane using a potent poison, then employ magic to transform him into a mere puppet. He then addressed Hyansam, questioning why he remained. Hyansam explained that a martial arts master was waiting for her outside. The servant added that he had been sent by a lady, which left Winvi puzzled, unable to grasp the reasoning behind this decision. Outside on the street, Tangon, a renowned martial arts master assigned to train the young master, greeted him. Winvi immediately recognized the warrior known as Furious Wind, whose sharp features and commanding presence offered him half-hearted assistance, though not for long. Tangon was the most esteemed combat master of the Storm Detachment and ranked among the top 5 strongest fighters within the 9 Dragons division. Tangon announced that he had been tasked with training the young man for 4 days ahead of the clan leader's visit, admitting he was too indifferent to assist with the preparations himself. Regardless, Winvi remained astonished by the woman's audacity in personally appointing Tangon, a master martial artist, for this role. She appeared genuinely concerned for her stepson's welfare, yet her true intention seemed to be to manipulate his mind and ultimately humiliate him. Curious about her strategy, Winvi decided to inquire with Gona about the specific training he planned to provide. The man repeated listlessly and without any enthusiasm that he had been instructed to train the young man for 4 days before the clan leader's visit. Winvi decided to ask his questions, but Gon responded firmly that he wouldn't demonstrate the technique twice, so Winvi needed to observe carefully. At that very moment, multiple images of a man appeared surrounding the young man, who was employing the shadow movement technique. After returning to his original position, Gon explained that this was the shadow step, and Winvi clarified that it was Yuchen who was performing it. Confirming this, the man added that the shadow step formed the foundation of the art practiced by the young master. Mentally disparaging Sanyang, Winvi realized he was about to praise his son by comparing their martial arts skills. Gon went on to explain that the shadow step is especially effective when combined with poisons or concealed weapons. He left subtle traces on the ground so the young man only needed to follow them. Despite being a shadow, these marks were unmistakably clear. Suddenly, a man smilingly declared that since he had demonstrated the shadow step, his role here was complete and he would be leaving. However, Winvi interrupted him, asserting that he had learned everything, causing Gon to freeze and ask if he had heard correctly. Placing his hand on his side, the young man insisted he had mastered the shadow step, but the man doubted him and began to question his claim. Gon pointed out that the young man had no formal martial arts training, and since the shadow step is quite complex, mastering it typically requires about 10 days of study. Even a prodigy like him required 5 days to grasp the true essence of the technique, which typically demands at least 3 months to master. Winvi considered the time needed to study the shadow step, and the man added that if he truly understood it, he should keep practicing. The man insisted he had learned it, yet simultaneously sensed that this person was unwilling to accept the truth. Covering his face with his hand, Gon expressed frustration, saying this wasn't something one could simply observe once and replicate. With no other option, Winvi challenged him to a wager of 30 silver coins, confident that he had truly mastered the shadow step. He knew that his monthly wage was around 10 coins, meaning he would have to invest at least 3 months' earnings. Gon retorted that the shadow step was an invaluable martial art born from the spirit of the Tang clan, and questioned why he would gamble such a treasure. Noticing the man's skepticism, the guy smirked and taunted the martial arts master, asking if he was afraid. He continued to provoke him by reminding that the warrior of the violent wind himself claimed it took 5 days to learn. Gon admitted that the remark had bruised his pride but then consented to accept the money as a penalty for disrespecting martial arts. Winvi was pleased by his agreement and made it clear there was no turning back now, confidently anticipating victory. Without hesitation, the man demanded that he demonstrate the shadow step, but before he could respond, the guy was already behind him. While Gon struggled to comprehend how he had pulled it off, Winvi, holding the stolen wallet, casually asked if he planned to have a drink today. The master was astonished that, beyond the impressive demonstration, he had somehow managed to snatch his coins, something that seemed utterly impossible. Stunned, Gon exclaimed that it was nothing but a trick, then asked with frustration how he had managed to master the shadow step technique so quickly. Winvi explained that he had only just learned it, having never before had the chance to study martial arts. Skeptical yet intrigued, the man agreed but questioned how Winvi could perform such a feat after seeing the move only once. With a confident smile, Winvi asked if the man doubted him, then offered to demonstrate the technique again to prove his skill. He then joked that he lacked other training techniques, suggesting that this might be somewhat dull, before proudly calling himself a genius. Now not only were his pockets empty but his confidence was soaring. Gon, however, asked him to wait so he could recover. The man revealed he knew many more intricate secret arts and expressed curiosity about how far Winvi could push his abilities. Winvi thought to himself that the man must be thoroughly baffled, not just by the shadow step trick but also by the stolen wallet. Although he had never formally studied martial arts, his life as the heir to the cult exposed him to many renowned masters, allowing him to memorize the core forms of various basic martial arts. Now, it was time to put that knowledge into practice. No matter how talented he was, attempting to steal Agona's wallet, now far more powerful than him, was an impossible feat. The secret lay in the spirits aiding him in the theft. As for them, it was as effortless as swimming. The moment had arrived to drain the wallet of his new mentor, who appeared to overhear his intentions. 4 hours later, Winvi demonstrated the butterfly technique alongside the soul following, the physical arts of the storm, and the 12 rotations of the storm. The guide effortlessly showcased his skills, effectively stripping the master of his ill-gotten gains. One spirit remarked that although he might be a heretic, it was tragic that his destiny remained intertwined with the cult's heir. Winvi inquired if they intended to proceed, to which Gon responded that he could no longer secure loans from the bank. With a smile, the young man offered one final opportunity. Yet the man, tears welling in his eyes, insisted he was already stranded in shallow waters. The heir gestured towards several wallets, suggesting they deposit everything back into the bank like true gentlemen. The trembling master hesitated before asking if he intended to sell them as slaves, to which Winvi replied that wasn't entirely accurate. There was one crucial martial art he couldn't easily replicate, the dance of the storm. This declaration unexpectedly enraged Rut, who immediately unleashed his energy, catching the young man off guard. In a grave tone, the man explained that while he might overlook other techniques, the storm dance embodied the very soul of the storm detachment. Challenging a dispute with a storm dance is a blatant sign of disrespect toward the detachment, which forms the foundation of the Nine Dragons division. Winvi believed he could easily manipulate a simpleton, but he overlooked the fact that he himself was a warrior from the Fierce Wind faction. Gon asserted his right to learn the technique, pointing out that he had already been introduced to both the first daughter and the third son. The young man responded that he wasn't questioning Gon's inheritance rights. Rather, he wanted to know if Gon acknowledged that he was capable of teaching him. This question genuinely caught the master off guard, who also noticed the young man's demeanor shift from hostile to earnest. Suddenly, the young man loudly challenged the Wind Warrior from the Storm detachment, asking if he truly believed himself strong enough to become a storm. Pounding his chest, he summoned his energy and pressed on, questioning whether he had the authority to carry on the Storm detachment's mission. Gon immediately recalled the Storm mission. After that devastating defeat, the detachment had fallen into ruin and was nearly disbanded. Yet he held on to the belief that they could rise again as a true storm. 2 decades had passed, and he still carried that mission deep within his heart. Still, he never imagined hearing such words from young Master Winvi, the weakest heir of the Tan clan. The man admitted that Winvi's words stirred his spirit, yet he cautioned that proposing a storm dance to settle a dispute was hard to accept. The man feigned a sudden heartache before confessing that he had only met him 4 hours earlier. He then inquired whether he would have agreed to teach the storm dance, enabling the continuation of the storm mission. Since he planned to escape after demonstrating a single shadow step, Gon admitted he couldn't deny that fact. At that moment, the man realized he was being deliberately mocked to coerce him into accepting a challenge and acknowledging the power of the heir. Although rumors suggested Winvi had changed, it became clear he was concealing his true strength and mastery. The martial arts he displayed, including the shadow step, were skills Winvi's body struggled to perform just 2 months prior. 2 months wasn't enough time to build such internal energy, indicating he had been accumulating power for much longer. Moreover, he kept this hidden from the lady and only revealed his true strength upon the Dark Lord's arrival. With a look of surprise, Gon remarked that this was a cunning scheme to deceive his family and take such a bold step. Wendy recognized this as a compliment within the Tang clan, yet hearing it from the master still felt unusual. At that very moment, the spirit declared that this man had finally recognized the true value of the air, though this only served to irritate him further. Then he asked Gon if he would teach him, while the spirit remarked that no one could resist the compelling words of the air. This technique is precisely why he compelled him to swear countless oaths of loyalty, leaving no choice but to comply. The master gazed at Winvi in astonishment as he angrily grasped the spirits, though the master himself was unable to perceive them. In the next moment, Gon's expression turned grave as he declared his intention to teach him the true storm technique. With hands folded respectfully, the young man introduced himself as Tan Wang Yi of the Tan clan, seeking the tutelage of Master Tan Gon. The man smiled faintly and replied that as a warrior of the storm detachment, a master of the fierce wind, he accepted the student's request. He then stepped onto the rack, warning that unlike previous martial arts, mastering the storm dance would not be a swift or easy feat. As the master began to unleash his energy, Winvi proposed raising the stakes, catching the Rut off guard, who had assumed the contest was settled. The young man added that they would wager on whether he could master the technique by day's end. The loser would be responsible for buying food and drinks for the winner. Gon asked if he was serious, then confidently declared he would be the one treating dinner, as he intended to win this time. Continuing to emit energy, the man instructed the student to watch closely, emphasizing that the move would be challenging to replicate. Former members of the Storm Detachment vowed not to interfere in the family's internal affairs concerning the succession of the clan leader. Therefore, even if Winvi continues to wield the storm technique, the Rut will be unable to support him as the rightful heir. For everyone else, this signaled only one inevitable truth: a new storm was approaching, ready to join them on their journey toward the evening. The master appeared utterly dejected and simultaneously stunned, unable to comprehend the events that had just unfolded. He remained indifferent to the lost wager, believing that the younger, more spirited master's rise would ultimately benefit them all. Yet that cursed man refused to share even a single drink with him, while continuing to indulge in a variety of dishes at his expense. When the waiter inquired if he wanted anything else, the man requested a bottle of alcohol, unable to face the situation sober. Winvi suggested that if he was a heavy drinker, they should visit the Dragon Tower, but Gon countered that it was far too costly. However, this bar was also quite pricey, the most popular restaurant in the area, and the man agreed with that assessment. Gon was willing to cover the bill even if it was somewhat expensive, unaware that Winvi planned to spend his entire weekly budget. A trip to the Dragon Tower was simply beyond his means and thus not even considered. Winvi anticipated a crowded venue, then discreetly slipped his hand beneath the table, quietly channeling his energy. He had been forced to restrain himself for 2 months due to a ban imposed by San Jun, but now he resolved that no further delays were acceptable. The spirits instantly recognized the binding spell of the revered demonic god Miphos and were astonished that such a mark would be left in a place like this. He mentally justified the urgency, explaining that their allies desperately needed to learn that the young heir of the cult, Wangui, was still alive. The spirit, appearing as a spider perched on a tree, remarked that 10 days had already passed without any suspicious gatherings. He lost track of time until he suddenly noticed a girl resembling a member of the Xinshan sect, leaving him puzzled about her presence there. He realized that this woman was the eldest daughter of the Ku Jin clan, now seeking an audience with the daughter of the Nam Gun clan. Hoping all was well with the child, he reminded himself that now was not the time for worry and hurried inside the house. He needed to impress the young master and persuade him to show greater leniency. Once inside, he overheard the woman questioning whether she intended to break her mother's heart. Kugson pointed out that this was nothing compared to the torment Winvi endured, being locked away and forbidden from eating. The woman urged not to worry about him, assuring that someone was secretly caring for him while she focused on the Dark Lord. Slamming her hand on the table, the girl wore a fierce expression and demanded an apology for the mistreatment he had suffered. She was convinced that San Yang was unaware of any assistance before punishing him and attempting to kill him. Nam Gun asked in disbelief why she was so furious over some insignificant scoundrel and questioned if she was truly his daughter. Kugson explained that she never failed to call him illegitimate, so she resolved to disclose the truth herself. The woman tried to stop her, but the girl walked confidently toward the exit, knowing she had already revealed everything. Sanjun reflected that she had always been overly gentle since childhood, but this weakness intensified after joining Xinshan. She couldn't fathom how Kuzin could succeed her father if she remained so indulgent. The spirit frowned, uncertain how to report this to him, since from an outsider's perspective, this family seemed utterly cowardly. At that moment, the woman slammed the table loudly, blaming everything on Winvi and insisting there was no need to wait for the Dark Lord's arrival. Sanjin summoned the servant, declaring she needed to leave, while the spirit tried to discern her intentions regarding the young master. Her malevolent aura suggested she was heading to meet the sorcerer with whom she had long conspired. Meanwhile, Winvi realized 10 days had passed since he sent his spirit to follow her, yet no news had arrived. There should have been communication through the revered demonic god Miphos, even within the 9 Dragons district. Either these individuals had departed or were hindered by some restriction. Regardless, the situation was clearly deteriorating. At that moment, Gon mentioned he was proficient with the weapon, yet when asked, he admitted he still felt dissatisfied. The master explained that a member of the Tang clan focuses on weapon mastery rather than relying on hidden techniques or poisons. The man clarified that the technique known as scattering colors originates from the Tang style, which explains its fragmented and unpredictable movements. Surprised, the man asked if he had noticed this detail, to which Winvi confidently responded that he was indeed a perceptive and capable student. Clenching his jaw in frustration, Gon snapped, questioning why, if he was such a skilled student, he had failed to learn humility. Many Saxon clans employ intricate and elaborate movements in their techniques, making them difficult to imitate. This complexity arises from their desire to physically embody the profound enlightenment found within martial arts through sophisticated forms. In contrast, the Tang clan is renowned for its expertise in concealed weapons and poisons, with both approaches sharing the commonality of utilizing specialized tools. Consequently, the Tang clan system ensures that their tools are versatile, capable of being adapted and employed in multiple ways. Although Tang martial arts techniques may appear less flashy, their weapons are never inferior to others in effectiveness. These fundamentals serve as the foundation for the strategic use of poisons and covert weapons, while the sword itself is meticulously divided into distinct parts for specialized combat. If he masters the Tang clan's weapon techniques, it will greatly enhance Windi's command of the 9 non-human demonic sword. Yet, whether he can wield this sword, once a distant, unattainable dream in his previous life, more effectively remains uncertain. It's truly unfortunate, but his study of poisons and related skills will have to wait until much later. At this moment, Gona sensed that he was plotting something. Receiving no response, the man added that Miss Kujin had returned, then inquired whether they shared a close relationship. The man understood that she was the only member of the 9 dragons who treated Windy like family. The relative who left the deepest impression on Windy's memory was his sister, who had once tried to care for him. Even after he assumed this body, the man continued to receive numerous letters from her, yet he chose not to disregard this critical moment. Her letters overflowed with concern and affection, expressing her hope that Kudsin would maintain a strong and positive relationship with him. However, from this point forward, he was destined to become San Jun's adversary. This raised the question of whether she would side with him when that time came. Gon mentioned that she planned to sit out initially, so the lady could only visit him the following day. With a heavy sigh, Windy agreed, though he never imagined events would unfold as they did. He attempted to foresee beyond the immediate challenges. He remarked that it was best to act quickly before his sister arrived. The master's eagerness to begin today took him by surprise. At that precise moment, a sly grin spread across the man's face as he declared he wouldn't begin because he had already completed the task. After some time, Yuchen inquired of the servant whether he had maintained 10 consecutive days without any mistakes, to which the servant confidently replied yes. The man commended him warmly before tossing a small pouch of money his way, prompting Hyansam to express his immediate gratitude. As he attempted to leave, Yuchen stopped him and posed a question about whether he intended to get rid of him, to which he responded affirmatively. The first son believed that since the poison had been administered 10 days earlier, the victim should now be fully poisoned and unable to recover in time. Tangon exerted considerable effort to instruct him, yet even he required 8 days just to master the basic movements of the shadow step technique. No matter how hard he tried, Winvi had barely grasped the fundamental forms by the time the Dark Lord made his visit. A new issue arose with his sister, who had a fierce argument with their mother over that scoundrel immediately upon her return. Complications with the plan could emerge when she turns 30, as she will officially become the heir to the division. However, his sister was too gentle to fulfill such a demanding role. She had joined the Xinshan sect and neglected to study the martial arts traditions of the Tang clan. This mindset might hinder her ability to effectively govern the clan, where kindness and leniency have no place. She is unfit to inherit the leadership of the 9 Dragons division, so it would be just for him to assume this position instead. Just then, a servant entered, announcing the arrival of a letter from the White Pavilion. Without hesitation, the young man welcomed him inside. The man doubted whether the letter truly came from the young master Winvi, but Yu Chan urged him not to hesitate and to deliver it immediately. The letter, written in a harsh and abrasive tone, saw Winvi relentlessly provoking Yu Chan, lacing his words with biting insults. The man suspected that this illegitimate scoundrel had been driven mad by poison, yet he also feared it might be a cunning trap. Such a venomous letter could easily poison the clan's harmony, prompting Yu Chan to swiftly dismiss the message on his behalf. But in the next moment, he realized that Winvi's intent was genuine. This was truly a challenge. The younger brother sought to mend their strained relationship through this duel, hoping to settle their grievances once and for all. Yuchen resolved to outmaneuver him completely, requesting the servants to deliver a counterproposal, which they refused. 2 hours later, a new letter arrived in which Winvi branded him a coward, and Yuchen sensed his brother's impatience. Convinced that his brother would persist with such provocations, Yuchen decided to stop accepting any further letters from the White Pavilion. However, the next morning, when Yuchen stepped into the courtyard, he found the word coward scrawled in enormous letters across the fence. At last, losing all patience, Yuchen instructed one of the servants to immediately visit the White Pavilion without delay. He shouted out that their duel was scheduled for tomorrow at noon in the second training room. The servant promptly relayed Yu Chan's message, while Winvi questioned why he had hesitated so long before accepting the challenge. Stunned, Gon immediately demanded to know what had been written to provoke him. Though he could only guess, the man with a sinister grin retorted by questioning how Gon expected to become an heir if he lacked such patience. Without waiting for a reply, he turned to the master and asked if he intended to prevent him from pursuing this endeavor. Smiling, the man responded by asking why he would interfere, suggesting that the event promised to be incredibly thrilling. With a determined expression, Winvi declared that he would face his brother in battle and beat him nearly to death. Shortly after, Kuzgan approached his brother with displeasure, demanding to know what fight he had agreed to and what it all meant. Yuchen also responded with irritation, insisting that since Winvi had mocked him first, she should handle the situation. The girl was taken aback to learn that Winvi had been the one to initiate the conflict. Driven by this, she hurried away to the White Pavilion, sensing a ghostly energy surrounding it. Now standing beside the pavilion, she could fully sense its presence. Strange symbols were etched into the walls and beams. Visible traces of deathly energy and lingering poison suggested that someone had endured prolonged torture here. Though it resembled a madman's hideout, she realized it might also serve as a place for studying martial arts. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open as Kaghan sensed a chilling, spectral energy and imminent mortal threat lurking just behind her. Without hesitation, the girl drew her sword from its scabbard and spun sharply, aiming the blade directly at his neck. Winnie halted the sword mere inches from his neck, remaining completely relaxed and unstrained. He fixed his sister with a displeased glare, clearly unimpressed. For several tense seconds, silence hung in the air as the girl struggled to comprehend that the threat had come from her own brother. Glaring menacingly at her, the young man remarked that such a harsh welcome was unexpected from her. Kugson quickly apologized, explaining she had intended to strike but never anticipated he would attempt to block her attack. She launched her assault just as he unleashed his poisonous dragon technique, catching him off guard and causing a delayed reaction. If she reported his mastery of poisons and combat skills to their clan, it could mean the end for him, unless Sanyang had sent her specifically to investigate him. Yet the girl smiled softly, admitting she had worried about him because of their mother, but now felt reassured that he was safe and well. She regarded him as her mentor, the sole person who truly cared for him, making it hard to believe her stepmother had sent her. Ignoring the comment, her cousin pointed out the dark energy radiating from him and asked if he had become involved in sinister dealings. Extending his hand and releasing a surge of energy, Win Vi inquired whether she was referring to the poisonous arts he had been studying. After coughing, the girl responded that she sensed both ghostly energy and poison, and was baffled by how he managed to combine the two. The man claimed it was a cursed poison, but in reality, he had merely infused mystical energy with poison to create that illusion. Concealing the energy released at the moment of death from human perception would be challenging, so it must be transferred to someone else to avoid suspicion. When questioned about his mastery of the cursed poison, Winvi explained it was the only toxin he was capable of wielding. He managed to succeed without his family's assistance, yet judging by her doubtful expression, she seemed unwilling to believe it. Then, the man asked, disregarding moral boundaries uncharacteristic for a Tang clan member, what he would do to attain greater power. He unleashed his energy once more and challenged her, saying that if it troubled her, she was free to try stopping him herself. Kugson was stunned by his brother's words and the aura he emitted, for earlier, he had seemed like an entirely different person. The girl bowed and remarked that he had changed profoundly, prompting Winvi to realize she could no longer allow her to continue protecting him. Only the old Winvi found this arrangement convenient. Despite the strain on their relationship, he needed to establish a firm boundary. Covering his mouth with his hand, Kugson admitted that everything had changed now, explaining why their mother and Vat had been so concerned about him. Suddenly, she broke into a wild smile, adding that his words ignited an intense thirst for battle within her. At that moment, the man's eyes widened as he sensed the lethal energy radiating from the girl, accompanied by a fierce urge to kill. Kugson blushed and laughed nervously, her hands trembling as she admitted that he had truly exceeded all her expectations. He perceives this energy as a soulful current, the very essence of the barrier destroyers, that carries with it only the promise of death. Amidst them flows what seems to be a celestial, ghostly current, demanding utmost caution when engaging it in battle. For a while, he questioned why Tan Kugsin was chosen as the foremost heir of the dragons and granted entry into the Chinsen sect. The mental jets which bestow exceptional talent upon their bearer are regarded as essential components in forging the destroyer of barriers. True to their name, these mental streams originate within the soul itself and evolve in tandem with their host. Aligned with the traditional Chinsen approach that prioritizes heart cultivation and demands relentless combat experience. Combined with the Tan clan's doctrine of pursuing victory at all costs, this transformed her into a fierce and uncontrollable warrior. Winvi explained that before delving into his energy, she needed to share her own story, which was quite troubling. After sheathed her sword, Kugsin quickly apologized, admitting she had forgotten the original purpose of her visit. Recognizing it was disrespectful to point a sword at him and disrupt his training, she offered a heartfelt apology. Winvi believed she had successfully quelled the bloodlust stirred by the heavenly ghost stream, a testament to Shinshin training's effectiveness. Yet, Kyugin's inherent strength meant vigilance remained essential. After some time, the man offered her a cup of tea, and the woman responded that although she often drank tea in Shinshin, she had never tasted one so delicious. Winvi explained that this tea was brought from the mountain of heaven, to which the sister remarked that she hadn't expected him to be such a connoisseur. Suddenly, the woman recalled that she had brought something with her. She then pulled out some tanhul from Meshin. She asked if he liked them, and Winvi, surprised, examined the treat but couldn't immediately say he enjoyed it. Instead, he felt he should be the one thanking her for the gesture, so he admitted that they truly were delicious. Hearing his response, Kugsin's face lit up as she expressed how happy she was to have pleased her beloved brother. The man struggled to reconcile this moment with the earlier image of her as someone who had seemed ready to kill. He decided to ask why she had come here, warning that he wouldn't appreciate it if her presence was meant to stop him from fighting tomorrow. Lowering her head, she admitted that was partly true, but explained she had come to apologize because she understood how their mother and Vat had treated him. Winvi frowned and asked if she really believed he would simply accept her apology and forgive them so easily. Kugsin acknowledged this but still wanted to apologize, to which her brother replied that he intended to fight her regardless. The woman confessed she had worried he was being forced into this, but now she realized it was actually part of his plan. She then questioned whether he was truly certain, despite his newfound strength, cautioning that the Vat was no trivial error and that he might reconsider his stance. Winvi believed she sensed their malicious schemes but lacked full details, and he responded by revealing he, too, had a secret advantage up his sleeve. Since he had also slipped into madness, they assumed that activating their witchcraft as planned would shatter his resolve. Kugsin expressed concern, warning that even if he emerged victorious, they must remain vigilant against the lingering influence those forces could exert within the household. Squeezing her sister's hand, she added that if John were to lose, their mother would do everything in her power to ensure the outcome remained a secret. Winvi smiled reassuringly, admitting she was overly anxious, then invited her to join him at the second platform the following day. The next day, a crowd gathered at the second training ground, where vendors vociferously promoted their wares amidst the bustling scene. Bookmakers were equally active, and the spectators confidently placed their bets on the second master's victory, undeterred by the brutal contest unfolding. Everyone wagered varying sums, yet all were unanimous in their belief that Yu Chan would triumph, anticipating an easy win. Kugsin, arriving just then and witnessing the scene, remarked in disbelief that this was precisely what Winvi had been counting on. The young man bluntly noted that she would undoubtedly face difficulties revealing this news, especially since their beloved brother appeared visibly unsettled. With a sinister grin, he added that this was exactly why he had arranged an arena where Yu Chan could enjoy himself. From the balcony, Gon noticed a large crowd gathered just as a member of the Wind of Justice detachment approached him. Tay mentioned that Winvi had organized the event. The man hadn't anticipated that Tay and Xin would also be interested in witnessing the battle. Tay explained that they were there on official duty, as a massive crowd had assembled to watch the fight and they were following orders. With a smile, Gon asked for their predictions on who would emerge victorious, admitting that even he found the outcome uncertain. Tay responded confidently that despite only coaching the young master for 10 days, it was clear Yu Chan would be the winner. The master pointed out that while everyone shared that opinion, it was Mr. Wang Wei who had actually initiated the duel. He then smiled again and asked if they were curious why he arranged the duel despite knowing victory was unlikely. Meanwhile, Hyansum informed Yu Chang that Winvi had spread word of the duel and even opened the doors to allow everyone to watch. This angered a man who retorted that he would simply teach the challenger a lesson, drawing all the city's spectators to witness the event. At that moment, Winvi loudly questioned why the man was so upset and if he was worried because he had lost his mother. Smirking, the man challenged Winvi, asking why he didn't go search for his own mother to ease his worries. Furious, Yu Chan snapped back that Winvi's words were as foul as his mother's, demanding silence to avoid being tainted by such filth. Winvi began to imitate him, adding that his son's mother should only heed praise, deliberately provoking a reaction. Unable to tolerate the insult, the eldest son erupted in a loud, scathing retort. He then stormed out of his seat and charged fiercely into the arena. He began shouting for Winvi, declaring he would silence his foul mouth forever by burying it. Onlookers were surprised when Tan Yue-chan arrived first, as they had assumed Winvi would initiate the confrontation. Rising confidently, Winvi remarked that his brother was quick to lose his temper, as everything seemed to effortlessly favor him. Standing before his brother, the young man declared his intent to claim the title and wished him luck in the battle ahead. With a sly smile, Yu-chan questioned whether his gesture was meant to show respect, concluding that Winvi must be intimidated now that the fight had begun. Kugson suspected that Winvi had deliberately disrupted his private technique, yet he resolved to keep his composure. She observed that while Mr. Winvi maintained his decorum, Mr. Yu-chan's rude behavior suggested he had accepted the duel invitation, contrary to expectations. Ultimately, the crucial factor was the battle's outcome. Winvi appeared confident, but Yu-chan was the rising star of the house. The eldest son asserted that insults were all his opponent could muster, and Winvi retorted by asking if he had come merely to exchange words. Yu-chan grew impatient and bluntly accused his opponent of plotting some underhanded tactic for this battle. He then admitted he had little hope of winning, just as his adversary abruptly tossed a smoke saber to the ground, signaling the fight's commencement. The crowd was instantly taken aback by the sudden smoke screen, quickly voicing their frustration as visibility vanished and their interest waned. Winvi hadn't anticipated this move, though he understood that deploying hidden weapons without any concealment would be futile. Despite this, he refrained from reckless attacks and even regarded his opponent as weaker for resorting to a surprise strike from behind. Expecting nothing less from his clan, he employed the shadow cover step, a maneuver designed to catch Yu-chan off guard. Approaching silently from behind, Winvi taunted Yu-chan, reminding him that Gon had taught him the shadow cover step, aiming to unsettle his foe. Yu-chan swiped his hand but missed, much to the delight of Winvi, who reveled in the success of his strategy. The eldest son of the Sky Clan questioned whether Yu-chan had truly mastered the technique, emphasizing that despite different mothers, he was still his father's heir. However, the shadow cover step is merely a deft footwork technique that manipulates Kai to create a deceptive shadow shield. Tensing with determination, Yu-chan resolved to demonstrate the authentic shadow cover technique. He then moved with astonishing speed, executing the technique flawlessly. Winvi recognized this as a skill that rendered one invisible and inaudible to the enemy, a true mastery of blending into the shadows. It's now evident why it's dubbed a genius. Tracking it through this dense smoke will be challenging, but eventually it will reveal itself. At that very moment, Yu-chan stepped forward, intent on attacking Winvi, who was fully prepared for such an assault. The eldest son, displeased with his brother's evasiveness, resolved once again to strike him from behind. He launched a relentless barrage of attacks, all of which Winvi effortlessly dodged, fueling his frustration and compelling him to intensify his assault. Winvi realized, regrettably, that his mastery of shadow concealment wasn't sufficient to evade the piercing gaze of the dead man. Moreover, an aura of bloodthirstiness radiated from him, ensuring that even without the dead man's sight, tracking him would be effortless. Observing this, Gon was surprised by Winvi's proficiency in shadow concealment, and Tae concurred, having noticed the same. Still, this scenario resembled a game of seals. Perhaps Winvi was merely evading until the smoke cleared. Yet even if the smoke dissipated, all efforts would be futile if the younger gentleman failed to land a decisive strike. With a smile, Gon replied that he had taught him a special move precisely for such situations, exceeding even Madame's expectations. He then asked if they believed he was truly formidable, to which his comrade affirmed that he was the finest in the world. Meanwhile, Yu-chan pressed his attack relentlessly, hurling insults at his brother and accusing him of fleeing like a cowardly rat. As the smoke began to clear, he resolved to end the confrontation swiftly, intending only to cripple his opponent by breaking his legs rather than showing mercy. Yet he was entirely at fault, having spent the entire time merely evading attacks with the shadow cover step, never retaliating. At that precise moment, Winvi encircled several clones of his brother, who believed he was incapable of dodging this assault. In the very next instant, the eldest son unleashed a relentless downpour of flowering pear needles, as if raining destruction upon his opponent. Drawing his sword, Kugson instantly recognized his brother's technique, naively assuming Yu-chan intended to kill Winvi. Brushing the needles off, the youngest son smiled and remarked that he might have toyed with them a bit longer, but it was time to end the fight. Another volley of needles surged toward Winvi, but he effortlessly deflected them with a swirling gust of wind conjured around him. The onlookers watched in awe as the wind enveloped Winvi, utterly bewildered by the sudden appearance of this mysterious power. Kugson realized that this technique, which Winvi had only practiced the day before, was so advanced that even she had failed to grasp it fully. With a look of astonishment, she finally comprehended the nature of the military skill her brother had mastered, the storm dance. Yuchen exclaimed in disbelief, declaring it impossible. He had never learned the storm dance, nor had anyone in his family. Winvi smiled and responded that, fortunately, someone had provided him with an exceptional teacher, subtly hinting at his own mother. Then, without hesitation, he declared that his brother should be grateful before launching a swift attack that caught him completely off guard. Chan was caught off guard by the astonishing speed, leaving him unable to react as events unfolded before his eyes. Meanwhile, Winvi executed the powerful storm dance. With a fierce strike, he delivered a direct blow to his brother's stomach, sending him crashing down with the full force of the storm. The eldest son was overwhelmed by intense pain, powerless to defend himself, putting his victory in jeopardy. The impact was so devastating that he was propelled out of the ring entirely. The crowd was stunned to witness Yuchen fall to Winvi with a single, decisive strike. The herald promptly declared the outcome unpredictable, something no one could have anticipated before the battle began. Tay inquired how Winvi managed to perform the storm dance, to which Gon replied that he possessed all the necessary skills. The man remarked that this was no trivial feat to be taken lightly, and the master agreed, affirming his point. Then, with a smile, he asked the group what they thought distinguished his wind from the one they had once served. At that moment, a question arose. Did he mean that Winvi shared the same talent as the clan leader? Gon responded that it was too soon to say, but mastering the creation of a storm in just 10 days was impressive and worth monitoring. Perhaps these were mere words, yet he expressed his intention to oversee the storm unit, placing his hopes on its potential. Suddenly, the man noticed the young man continuing to generate wind, seemingly trying to decipher his next move. At that precise moment, the youngest son approached his sister with a smile and asked if she would challenge her brother to a fight. Kugson stared at him in stunned disbelief, completely unprepared for such an unexpected proposal directed at her. The crowd instantly identified the girl as the heiress of the illustrious Nine Dragons family, also known as the sister of the young master. Shocked, she scanned the crowd and overheard whispers that she had returned from Xinchen to meet with the Dark Lord. So many years had passed that no one recognized her anymore, and now her brother, who had mastered the storm dance, was daring to challenge her. The spectators were eager to witness how the newlywed powerhouse Kugson would fare against his brother, with many shouting that this duel promised to surpass the excitement of Winvi and Yuchen's legendary battle, potentially shaking up today's jackpot. With the perfect opportunity to showcase Mrs. Kugson's prowess, the crowd erupted, chanting her name to rally her on. Xin sensed the tension spiraling out of control and turned to Tay, inquiring if Winvi still stood a chance. The master advised that the young man should avoid confronting Miss Kugson directly, though he was curious to see what he intended to do. Having defeated Yu Chan, the young man would secure a respected position within the family, but a victory over Kugson would allow him to claim the title of heir. The lady clearly realized the risks involved, and at that moment, she silently questioned her brother about his true intentions. If they were alone, she wouldn't worry about their reputation, but now, rejecting the challenge would bring shame upon their family name. Her voice, laced with laughter, questioned what worries she harbored, as he pleaded with himself while her heart demanded a fierce struggle. Yarrow's voice insisted on trusting his deepest desires, yet Kugson fought internally to resist agreeing with him. Now her concerns shifted to Winvi's standing and their family's honor, feeling compelled to apologize on his behalf for such conduct. Observing the girl's unusual demeanor, the youngest son inquired if something troubled her, diverting her thoughts. Without waiting for a reply, he smiled and asked if she was overly anxious about a battle that wouldn't even end in death. He invited her to simply embrace the moment, to which Kugson responded that she was barely holding herself back. Then, without hesitation, she leapt into the arena. The crowd erupted in cheers, thrilled that she had accepted his challenge, eagerly anticipating an extraordinary spectacle. The girl introduced herself as the heiress of the 9 dragons from the Sichuan Tang clan and a swordswoman of the Xinchen sect. Trained by the blade master Wuhu, she specialized in the rare and solitary technique known as the blade cutting zipper. Her peers in Jianghu honored her with the title Beauty of 1,000 Petals, and now she looked forward to a worthy battle. Winvi responded that he was the second heir of the 9 dragons family, trained by Tangon, the strongest knight of the wind. Today, he sought her guidance as a mentor, and once she accepted the challenge, the audience erupted in joyous applause. The man noticed his sister's newfound joy, evident from the radiant smile that had just appeared on her face. With wild excitement shining in her eyes, Kugson declared she hadn't felt this thrilled in ages, and it was her brother who had reignited that spark. Winvi admitted that he, too, felt a surge of inspiration. Seizing the sword, the girl announced that her brother was eager to spar with her. Radiating energy, the smiling man asked if she was ready, eager to begin without delay. Without hesitation, Kugson gave the signal, launching herself into an attack determined to defeat her brother swiftly. Winvi questioned whether beginners were granted the advantage of 3 strikes before unleashing his storm dance technique. As they closed the distance between them, Kugson explained that this was the seal of the blades of the early wind, a technique that halted her opponent's sword. Maintaining the distance, she asked if that meant she could swing her sword freely without any repercussions. She then reminded him that he had encouraged her to enjoy the fight, so there was no question of any unfair advantage. Winvi was taken aback by her astonishing speed. In response, he chose to employ the shadow cover body drift technique. Kugson was amazed that he was familiar with Chan's skills, acknowledging that her brother had truly exceeded all expectations. Suddenly, she declared he still had much to learn, delivering a strike where the real Winvi had just stood. The man smiled and asked if mastering Kinson's sword art was so profound that it no longer resembled its original form. Kugson explained that he had deliberately concealed the energy she witnessed yesterday, ensuring that even she harbored her own hidden secrets. At first, Windy furrowed his brow, but then a smile spread across his face, recognizing it as a clear challenge to unleash his full power. He began to generate an immense surge of energy, preparing to demonstrate to her the technique of the poisonous dragon. As the sister witnessed the ghostly dragon's emergence, a smile illuminated her face, accompanied by a surge of exhilaration. Determined to strike first, she declared that this was the very poisonous aura and ghostly energy she had encountered earlier. Stepping into a combat stance and gripping her sword firmly, the girl declared that this was the weapon she intended to wield in the fight ahead.